Hey bees, I'm Marie from Humblebee and Me, and today we are going to do a little experiment. We are going to make the essential mineral makeup from my book with food. So these swaps are ones that I get asked about a lot. I think people kind of have a tendency to go, oh, well, yellow iron oxide, well, that's just a yellow powder. Turmeric is also a yellow powder, so I should be able to use them interchangeably, right? And they kind of go through the entire recipe, and the recipe is all made out of powders of varying colors. If you sort of strip it down to just that, it's mostly white powder and then some yellow powder, some red powder, some brown powder. And hey, you probably have powders that are all of those colors in your kitchen already, right? So wouldn't it be amazing if those made awesome makeup? Yeah, they don't. So I thought we would just sort of do it so you can see just why using the real ingredients is super important. So for this video, I am making the Marie blend from the book, my book, Make It Up. And we're basically just sort of swapping out all the ingredients for the food ingredients or the more readily available ingredients that I get asked about using the most. The process we're going to be following is exactly the same as making mineral makeup, minus the sort of color matching part, because I am using a color blend that I've already matched to myself and to the mineral makeup that we'll be comparing it to. So basically throw everything into a coffee grinder and zzz, that's pretty much it. And then we'll sort of take a look at how they stack up against one another. Spoiler alert. It's a really unbalanced stack. But yeah, let's get started. All right, so here are our substitute ingredients. I have used white kaolin clay instead of the titanium dioxide that's called for in the recipe. And I have used arrowroot starch instead of the magnesium stearate, zinc oxide, and cerussite mica that's called for in the recipe. And then for our pigments, I have used spices. So for reference, here are the true pigments. You might get a better idea of the red there with the lid, since this is a rather deep tub. So this here is turmeric, which is actually a fairly close match. This is ground cinnamon for the brown, which you can see is a little light. And then this last one here is paprika, and I gotta say, it doesn't look very red here at all, but when people want to use a food instead of red iron oxide, they usually ask me if paprika will do the trick, so that is why we're doing that. For reference, this is the makeup that we are trying to make. Process is pretty much the same. We're just gonna pop everything in a coffee grinder. This should be a coffee grinder that you only use for projects like this. Don't try to make your food coffee grinder serve double duty. That will make for some really gross tasting coffee. All right, we're gonna blend up powders first, and then we're going to let the dust settle and add our oils to weigh them down. So you're gonna wanna pop a piece of cling film over top here. This just helps reduce the volume of the grinder. You can see it pushes down nicely with the lid, and then you get a much more even blend this way. So let's blendy blendy. I'm gonna leave that to let the dust settle for about 5 minutes before coming back, giving it a stir, and adding some liquid oil. Okay, this has had a chance to settle, so let's see what's going on in here. First thing I'm noticing is that this is overwhelmingly yellow and looks kind of like Easter. It also kind of smells like curry, which is usually a good thing, but nothing I've ever really wanted in my cosmetics. So 20 drops of jojoba oil. Give that a little shake. That helps coat the droplets of oil so that when you start the coffee grinder, they don't just immediately leap up and stick to the lid. Let's give that another blend. All right, still very yellow. So let's scoop some of this into a little dish, and then we'll do a comparison with the real thing. So here we are. I think first thing that you can see is that they're very obviously very different colors. And that is likely because the turmeric is a reasonably good pigment, which you'll probably know if you've ever made Indian food with a wooden spoon. I definitely have. That spoon is and will probably always be yellow. whereas the paprika and the cinnamon aren't particularly great pigments. I mean, none of these are particularly great pigments. There's obviously a lot more turmeric in there than the cinnamon and the paprika. And you might sort of think, well, you know, we could just use more. And it's like, you could, but cinnamon and paprika are both pretty irritating spices to the skin, especially cinnamon. So I would be pretty hesitant to use a ton of those in something I'm gonna be putting on my face. So let's check and see kind of the coverage and consistency. So they're both nice and soft. You can see one is a little bit more convincingly flesh-like than the other. And rub them in. All right, so this one feels really, really silky. This one, the mineral makeup, still feels silky, but it's not quite as silky. You can see the mineral makeup kind of rubs into my finger and changes the color of it and actually has some coverage, whereas this is really just kind of rubbing off. Some bits are sticking in some of the sort of like wrinkles in my skin and are turning those yellow, but yeah, it's not awesome. And let's try with a brush. So I have two brushes here that are pretty darn similar. These are both from e.l.f. I think this is the foundation blurring brush and this is the powder blurring brush. I use them both for makeup application. I love them both. So tap off the excess. And okay, well, I'm not loving that. The powder comes off really quickly, as you can kind of see. It doesn't really seem that interested in my skin. It's definitely clinging to kind of like the little hairs on my arm, but not doing much other than that. Ugh. And there's just a bunch of it on the table there. Yeah, that's not awesome. And as I keep brushing, like it just comes off. Like you can't really see where I put powder and where I didn't. Yeah, that's not really makeup, that's just dust. So let's get the makeup or the yellow off this one and grab some of this one here. So I already tapped a little into the lid here. Pick that up. Looks like we need a bit more. So there you can see we're actually getting some coverage, and because it's actually the color of my skin, it's blending in pretty well. But it's not just sort of clinging to the hair. Like there's actually some covering up happening there. I'll do my hands and that way you can kind of see it covering the vein colors there. So there's kind of your difference. You can definitely see that this, like I have makeup on, I can definitely feel it and see it because this is, well, I didn't blend this makeup really to match my arm, so I can definitely see that I am wearing makeup. When I kind of rub on it, it still stays on and I can actually pick some up on my finger. It's got enough pigmentation and coverage that I can actually get some on my finger. Whereas you sort of see over here, this other arm here, just, I don't know, it looks pretty much just like an arm. There's really not any makeup on there at all. Yeah. Or here's for an underarm swatch because that's a lot better contrast. So here I have some of the makeup where you can see it's providing quite a bit of coverage, and then trying here with the food powder, and it mostly just sort of sweeps off my arm. I can't really like buff it in. Like this one will buff in really nicely and I can kind of spread it around and get some good coverage, whereas this stuff just kind of, like I can't build any coverage here. It just, like, it's awful. This is so awful. I don't, if you use this in really tiny amounts, it would make a decent setting powder, but if you're gonna do that, like leave out the spices, right? Like, I can actually apply this, here, I'll pick up a bit off the table because there's so much there. I can actually apply this like over top of the mineral makeup and you don't even know it's there. All right, well, I hope you found that interesting, and I hope I have convinced you to purchase proper cosmetic ingredients like titanium dioxide, zinc oxide, and the iron oxides if you really want to make high performance makeup. I know there are a lot of recipes like the one that we just kind of made around the internet that tell you that cinnamon and cornstarch and cocoa powder and those sorts of things will make you a really nice foundation. But honestly, as somebody who has spent hundreds and hundreds of hours making makeup and testing makeup, that just ain't true. Those food ingredients, which yes, are cheap, and yes, you already have, and those things are really, really, really lovely and very tempting, they just don't have any of the things that we want in cosmetics. There's no adhesion, which is a really big one. There's no coverage, and they're very, very low pigment, in addition to being potentially quite irritating to the skin and also making your face smell like salad. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, and please check out my book if you want to learn how to make real awesome homemade makeup that really, really works, that matches your skin tone and offers coverage and adhesion and slip and all these wonderful words and performs like nice, good, real makeup and not like food on your face. So I will throw a link to that in the description box below. It is called Make It Up. It is available on Amazon and from all major booksellers. I happen to think it's pretty groovy. And yeah, I will see you next time.